What if death is not the end? From a Buddhist perspective, what really happens in the afterlife? Part 1. This is, perhaps, the most fundamental question of our existence. For many of us in the modern world, death is seen as the ultimate endpoint, a final, terrifying annihilation. It's the abrupt closing of the book, the extinguishing of the light. This view fills us with a deep, primal fear, the fear of non-existence, the fear of losing everything we are, everyone we love, and all the experiences that have shaped us. We look at the finality of it, and we are terrified. But what if this view is based on a mistaken identity? What if the self we are so afraid of losing isn't what we think it is? For thousands of years, the Buddhist tradition has offered a radically different perspective on death. It sees death not as an endpoint, but as a profound transition. It offers a map of a journey that consciousness undertakes after it leaves the body, a journey that can transform our fear of dying into a powerful inspiration for living more fully and fearlessly right now. In this series, we will explore that map. To understand the Buddhist view of the afterlife, we must first understand what it is that is believed to continue. Our fear of death is fundamentally the fear of the ego's demise. We identify ourselves with our body, our name, our memories, our personality. This bundle of experiences we call me. In Buddhist philosophy, this collection is known as the 5 skandhas: form, the physical body; feelings, perceptions, mental formations, our habits and thoughts; and consciousness. We cling to this bundle, believing it to be a solid, permanent self. Therefore, the dissolution of this bundle at death feels like our complete and total end. This is the teaching of anatta, or not self. It suggests that what we call the self is not a fixed, solid entity, but a dynamic, ever-changing process. A better metaphor for who we are is not a statue, but a river. The river is constantly flowing, never the same water from moment to moment. Yet, there is a clear continuity. What dies from this perspective is the particular wave, the specific form of this body and this personality. But the water that made up that wave, the underlying stream of consciousness, vijnana sota, does not get annihilated. It simply recedes from that form and returns to the vast ocean of potential, ready to form a new wave. The brain, in this view, is not the producer of consciousness, but rather a receiver or a channel for it. When the radio breaks, the broadcast signal doesn't disappear. From this, we can deduce what the experience of death is from a Buddhist perspective. It is not an ending, but a separation. It is the separation of the stream of consciousness from its temporary physical vehicle, the body. Imagine a caterpillar reaching the end of its life. To an outside observer, it might seem to die as it encases itself in a chrysalis. But what is actually happening is a profound transformation. The essential life energy is transitioning from one form to another. Death is seen in the same way, as a necessary, natural process of transition, not a tragic ending. This core understanding changes everything. If our fundamental nature is not the temporary wave, but the vast ocean of consciousness itself, then what is there to fear? This is not just a philosophical idea. It is a lived experience that can be cultivated. The way to become comfortable with the great dissolution of death is to become comfortable with the small dissolutions we experience every day. So, what does this mean for you as you contemplate your own mortality or grieve the loss of a loved one? It offers a perspective of profound comfort and hope. It suggests that the essence of a person, their stream of consciousness, shaped by their love and their life's actions, is not erased. It continues. This leads us to a simple yet profound daily practice, the contemplation of impermanence, anicca. Throughout your day, just begin to notice the constant process of change and transition. A phone call begins, and then it ends. A meal is prepared, and then it is finished. A day is born at sunrise, and it dissolves at sunset. Our ordinary habit is to resist these small endings, to cling to pleasant moments and push away their passing. The practice is to soften this resistance. When you finish a conversation, just take a moment to acknowledge, this has ended. When a pleasant experience fades, notice that too, without needing to grasp for it. You're not being morbid. You are training your mind to see the natural, rhythmic, wave-like nature of reality. By becoming intimate and at peace with these countless small deaths that happen every day, our deep existential fear of the great death begins to lose its power. To summarize, our deepest fear of death is the fear of ourself being annihilated. Buddhist wisdom suggests this is a mistaken identity. What we are is not a fixed self, but a continuous stream of consciousness. Death is not the extinguishing of this stream, but a profound transition, a separation from its temporary physical form, much like a wave returning to the ocean. But this understanding opens up an even more fascinating question. If consciousness continues, where does it go? What is the journey like? The Tibetan tradition in particular offers an incredibly detailed and vivid map of this afterlife journey, a state known as the Bardo. And exploring that map is where our journey will take us next. What are your greatest fears or questions about death? Share your reflections in the comments below. If this perspective offers you a measure of peace, please like this video and subscribe to Buddhism Wisdom, spirituality to continue the exploration. Part 2. In our last part, we established the foundational Buddhist view that death is not an end, but a transition for the stream of consciousness. We reframed it from a terrifying annihilation to a natural process of transformation. This, of course, leads to the most compelling question. A transition to what? What is the actual experience of the afterlife like? For this, we turn to the rich, profound, and often misunderstood teachings of Tibetan Buddhism, particularly as found in texts like the Bardo, often known in the West as the Tibetan Book of the Dead. These texts are not just ancient scripture, they are a practical manual, a guide for the deceased and for the living on how to navigate the incredible journey of the mind after it has separated from the body. This journey takes place in a state known as the Bardo. The word Bardo literally means in-between state, or a gap. While there are many types of Bardos in life, the one we are concerned with is the Bardo of death, the intermediate state between one life and the next. According to these teachings, after the final breath, the disembodied consciousness enters a state that is incredibly lucid, powerful, and also potentially very confusing. It is a state that is described as being like a vivid, prolonged dream, but far more intense. The key to understanding the Bardo is this: everything experienced within it is a projection of one's own mind. The mind, now freed from the constraints of the physical senses, experiences its own deepest contents, its own karmic imprints, as an external reality. A beautiful metaphor for the Bardo is to imagine yourself in a cosmic movie theater. The projector is your own mind, and the film being shown is the entire collection of your past actions, thoughts, and habits, your karma. The sounds, the lights, and the characters you encounter are all manifestations of your own inner world. The Bardo journey is often described in stages. The first is the moment of death itself, where the elements of the body dissolve. In this moment, the teachings say, one has a profound experience of the fundamental nature of reality. A brilliant, boundless radiance known as the clear light. This is the purest state of consciousness. For a trained practitioner, someone who has meditated on the nature of mind during their life, this is a supreme opportunity. If they can recognize the clear light as their own true nature, they can achieve liberation, or nirvana, right then and there. For most, however, this experience is overwhelming, and consciousness faints, only to awaken in the next stage of the Bardo. This is where the karmic projections begin in earnest. The consciousness will experience a series of visions, often described as encounters with peaceful and wrathful deities. Now, this is a crucial point that is often misunderstood. These are not external gods or demons sitting in judgment. The peaceful deities are the radiant projections of our own virtues, our own enlightened potential, our love, our compassion, our wisdom, shining forth. The wrathful deities, the terrifying demonic figures, are the energetic projections of our own negative karma, our own anger, greed, fear, and ignorance, now experienced as an external reality. The entire journey through the Bardo is a series of tests, and the only test is, can I recognize these appearances as the play of my own mind? If the consciousness reacts with fear and aversion to the wrathful projections, or with grasping desire towards the peaceful ones, it generates more karma and gets further entangled. If it can rest in a state of clear, calm recognition, seeing everything as a dreamlike projection, it can find freedom. Eventually, if liberation is not achieved, the winds of karma will guide the consciousness towards a rebirth that is in harmony with its dominant habits and tendencies from its previous life. So, how does this ancient map of the afterlife help us, the living? The answer is profound. The Bardo teachings are not primarily a guide for the dead, but a guide for the living on how to practice for a conscious death. The way you prepare to navigate the projections of your mind after you die is by learning to work with the projections of your mind while you're alive. This leads to a fascinating practice. Mindful dream practice, or dream yoga. Our nightly dreams are the closest experience we have to the Bardo state. They are a realm where our mind creates entire worlds. The practice begins with a simple intention. As you are falling asleep, repeat to yourself the intention. Tonight, in my dreams, I will be aware that I am dreaming. You are planting a seed of lucidity. When you are eventually able to have a lucid dream, a dream where you know you are dreaming, you are training the exact same mental muscle required to navigate the Bardo. If you can recognize the strange projections in your dream as just a dream, You are building the capacity to recognize the terrifying projections in the Bardo as just my mind. The Buddhist perspective on the afterlife, particularly from the Tibetan tradition, offers us an incredible map. It portrays a journey not through external heavens or hells, but through the internal landscape of our own minds. The Bardo is a confrontation with ourselves, with the totality of our karma, where the ultimate test is to recognize the dreamlike nature of it all. This understanding shifts the focus entirely. Preparing for death is no longer about prayer for a heavenly reward. It becomes about training the mind here and now. But what is the ultimate purpose of this training? How does seeing life and death as a continuous cycle of training and transition change the entire purpose of our existence? That is the final stage of our exploration. What do you think of the idea that the deities we might meet after death are projections of our own minds? Share your thoughts in the comments. If this deep dive fascinates you, please like the video and subscribe to Buddhism Wisdom, Spirituality. We'll see you in part 3. Part 3. Welcome back. In our journey to understand the Buddhist perspective on the afterlife, we began by reframing death not as an end, but as a transition of consciousness. Then, in Part 2, we explored the Bardo, the in-between state, as a vivid map of this after-death journey, a confrontation with the karmic projections of our own minds. We now arrive at the ultimate question: so what? Knowing all this, how should we live? How does this profound understanding of death and what comes after transform the purpose and meaning of the life we are living right now? The understanding of life, death, and rebirth as a continuous cycle, or samsara, completely reorients the purpose of our existence. If this life is just one brief chapter in a vast novel, then the goal is no longer simply to accumulate as much pleasure, wealth, or fame as possible for a self that is ultimately temporary. Life becomes a precious and rare opportunity, a training ground. The purpose of life becomes to purify the stream of consciousness, to plant skillful seeds of karma, and to weaken the unskillful habits of greed, hatred, and delusion that keep us trapped in this cycle of suffering. The ultimate goal of this path is not a better rebirth in a heavenly realm, though that is considered a possible outcome of a virtuous life. The ultimate goal is nirvana, a word that literally means to extinguish or to blow out. What is extinguished are the fires of the 3 poisons. Nirvana is the complete and total cessation of suffering, the liberation from the endless cycle of samsara itself. It is the realization of our true nature, which is already peaceful, clear, and free. This leads to a famous saying found in many contemplative traditions: die before you die. What does this mean? It doesn't mean to be morbid or to reject life. It means to practice the death of the ego, the death of our rigid identification with our stories and fears, while we are still very much alive. The map of the Bardo gives us a perfect guide for this. We learn that the terrifying demons we might meet after death are just our own anger and fear. So, the practice becomes: can we meet our own anger and fear with mindful, non-judgmental awareness today? Can we recognize them as projections of our own mind right now? Every time you choose to respond to an insult with patience instead of anger, you are practicing dying to your ego's reactivity. Every time you act with selfless generosity, you're practicing dying to your habit of grasping. By practicing these small deaths of the ego every day, the great physical death of the body loses its terror. We have already let go of the very thing we were most afraid of losing, our false, constricted sense of self. This grand existential view translates into simple, powerful practices that can infuse your daily life with profound meaning. The first is the practice of the daily dedication of merit. Merit is the positive, wholesome energy generated by any skillful action, thought, or word. At the end of each day, or after any specific good deed, take a moment to consciously dedicate this positive energy. Silently say to yourself, "May the merit of this action not be for my benefit alone, but may it contribute to the happiness and liberation of all living beings." This simple act is incredibly powerful. It directly counters the ego's tendency to hoard and claim ownership, transforming every small act of kindness into part of a vast, selfless purpose. The second practice is to regularly contemplate what are known as the 4 reminders that turn the mind toward a meaningful path. You don't need to dwell on them, just touch them lightly. They are, first, reflecting on the preciousness of this human life and the rare opportunity it provides. Second, reflecting on the certainty of death and the impermanence of all things, which creates a sense of urgency. Third, reflecting on the unfailing law of karma, that our actions have consequences. And fourth, reflecting on the suffering inherent in the cycle of samsara, which motivates us to seek liberation. Just bringing one of these to mind for a few minutes a day can cut through our complacency and powerfully reconnect us to what truly matters. And so, we complete our journey. We began by confronting our deepest fear, the fear of annihilation, and reframing death as a transition of a continuous stream of consciousness. We explored the Bardo as a map of the after-death journey, revealing it to be a profound encounter with the projections of our own mind. And finally, we have seen that this entire understanding is not about escaping life, but about engaging with it more fully, more purposefully, and more compassionately. The ultimate teaching is this: death is not an end to be feared, but a reality to be prepared for. And the very best way to prepare for a good death is to live a good life. The skills you need to navigate the afterlife are the very same skills you need to navigate your present life: mindfulness, wisdom, and an open heart. By practicing dying to our ego each day, we find we are more ready than ever to truly live. What aspect of this perspective on life and death is most challenging or comforting to you? Please share your reflections in the comments below. If this journey has offered you a new way to see your life, please press the like button and subscribe to Buddhism Wisdom, Spirituality. Thank you for walking this path with us. May you live fully, and may you be free from fear.